What was the worst way you saw someone ruin their life? I watched a mate lose 2 houses and $500,000 to cocaine in 1 year. It's kind of strange how it works. I have plenty of friends that use or used to use cocaine at all levels of income. But cocaine is simply not a habit you can maintain for long if you don't have a decent amount of money and reliable enough connections to consistently get any. The end result is usually an increasing dependence on cocaine or a switch to heavy, dirtier, cheaper alternatives like prescriptions, crack, meth, and even alcohol and others, or you simply stop doing cocaine. Cocaine seems to be a big problem that most people can't afford to have a problem with. It has just been my impression that cocaine destroys the lives of rather successful people because they get exposed to it more and more as they succeed and mimic the behavior of their new rich successful friends. And then it is just a game of trying to keep up appearances as the drug does more and more damage to their mind and bodies. This one sentence you posted made me think of those 2 guys that would show up to the parties with mounds of cocaine and lame stories about how rich they had become. I saw one of them not long ago, and he was absolutely gaked the fuck out and visibly jaundiced. I would probably feel bad if he wasn't such a douchebag. A girl I crushed on super hard in high school started doing meth, and began sleeping with her dealer, who was a juggalo with a rapidly diminishing amount of teeth. Between meth and juggalo, I don't know what's worse. My first wife and alcohol. She had lots of people to support her. She was in the hospital for a week to dry out, then a treatment program for a month. It lasted 3 months before she was back on the bottle. Her doctor warned her that she has 1/3 of a liver left, and if she didn't stop, she'd die. Which she did 18 months after she last went back to the bottle. Her ankles swelled up, as did her legs, as the kidneys and dying liver couldn't process the fluids. And when she finally succumbed, she looked like she was 5 months pregnant as the fluids were now accumulating in the lower torso. So, dead at 38. That was back in 1996. My sister died this same way at 29 years old. Drunk Buddy climbed into bed with his mother-in-law because she thought she was into him. She wasn't. Ended poorly. My brother. Heroin addiction. He was always an odd kid, but a very talented guitar player, and one of the most thoughtful, caring, funny, and unique people I've ever known. He passed away 4 years ago from a fentanyl overdose. I miss him every day, but he brought so much joy to the lives of those around him that the memory of him isn't a sad one. I laugh way more than I cry when I think about him. That's a decent legacy to leave, laughter. Sell their condo that was rented out, and invest all the profit in crypto in December 2021. Holy shit. This has got to be the worst timing of all time. Numerous people, to gambling addiction. Outsiders don't believe it is as devastating as drug addiction, but it is just as strong. The gambling addict can ruin their entire life in a matter of hours and not even see it happening until everything is gone. Outsiders are like, "Why didn't you just stop?" As though stopping was as simple as not ordering dessert after dinner. So the addict feels stupid and alone instead of seeing it right away as an addiction. The industry is completely designed toward taking the addict's money and calls it gaming when discussing it in public. When hiring PhD-level psychologists to make the games as addictive as possible, they discuss it in terms such as exhausting the gambler's funds. They aren't referring to being sure the gambler ends the session with the casino in possession of their bankroll money. They are talking about exhausting all funds the gambler can access, leaving the human being without anything and thus making room in the chair for the next person to become addicted. I saw my dad destroyed his life by not taking care of himself. When I was 2, he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. After my mom divorced him, he went downhill and refused to cooperate with his meds. He's also a manic depressive bipolar. Every year since I was 5, he has had some kind of amputation. I am 22 years old now. He is 49. Has no legs below his knees, only has 3 fingers total now since he just got one of his thumbs amputated. I really need to be careful and watchful that I am not like him. I would suggest really getting to know your dad, like on a fundamental level, not father-son relationship, soul to soul if that makes sense. He's a hurt soul who thinks he's unworthy of good health and happiness. Unless the kid is a therapist, asking them to do this for the father can inflict a lot of trauma on the kid. In my hometown, a 17-year-old kid put a shotgun under his chin. It blew off his jaw and everything below his eyes. He survived, and a few years ago I was in town and saw a rail-thin guy with no jaw and a cloth covering his face. I think it was him at about 45 years old. The reason he did it was not reported at the time. But years later my mom told me that he tried to kill himself because he had a wet dream and thought the emission was a sign of venereal disease. His parents had always told him that if he got VD then his life was ruined. There was no internet to answer our questions back then, so without being able to get any other information about what happened, he decided to kill himself. The parents of that town knew what happened, but they decided not to tell any of their kids the truth because it was better to risk more suicides than to provide any sex education. Yeah, sex ed is important not just for the sex part, but for learning about how bodies work. Sexual repression damages that knowledge. An elderly relative told us she was not taught about periods, and when she got her first one she thought she was dying and was really traumatized. Which is a story I've heard from other before. I was a pilot for a US regional airline. Smaller, stepping stone airline. Rough schedule, low pay. Anyway, one of our pilots was a good guy. Wife, lovely kids, but made very little money. Anyway, he got involved with someone that wanted him to smuggle some cocaine into the US by swallowing a few condoms full of the shit, then travel back to the US. Well, the condoms started breaking in his stomach en route. He went to the lab and about near died. They had to have the EMTs haul him out on a stretcher. He went right to the hospital, recovered, then went right to jail. Threw it all away for a bit of money. A guy I used to work with got himself into crazy levels of debt. A local guy won the lottery. Nothing major, but still life-changing. Something like $30,000. We were all on our lunch break, talking about what we would do if we won that much. I would pay off these credit cards, or I would trade in my car for a newer model. This guy says that it wouldn't make a difference. At 23 he was already over $200,000 in debt between credit cards and personal loans. He would just get another loan to pay something off, and keep borrowing. A few months later he was complaining about how he was now an additional $50,000 in debt on top of it. This guy was only making around $40,000 a year. He got the bright idea to file bankruptcy. Lost his car, his house, his job. Last I knew he was staying at friends' houses couch surfing, working for a pittance just trying to survive. At least part of the blame for his situation is on the banks that kept giving him loans. I understand the car and the house, but is losing your job too common in the US after declaring bankruptcy? Or did he work in finance where you have to disclose that to the relevant bodies? If you don't have a car and house, I hear it's hard to hold down a job in the US. One of my friends turned to alcohol and all but gave up on life after his mom passed. It eventually caught up with him, and he passed away at the age of 32. The sad part is that there were signs that he wanted to get better and wanted to get life together again. It was just too little too late, and he went about it the wrong way. A friend of mine decided to not use protection with a girl he just met, for a whole weekend, without asking if she was using any contraception at all, and finishing inside. I often feel really bad for this poor baby dragged into this world out of sheer stupidity. I know so many people who do this and then are surprised they get pregnant. I had a cousin who just graduated from high school when she first got pregnant. I knew she knew about birth control and condoms and just being safe in general. So when I asked her why, she said, "Oh well, we thought if it happens, it happens. This isn't a fortune cookie. This is a living, breathing child you're talking about." A girl from college tried to kill me over an argument. I was hospitalized for 3 weeks with 4 surgeries total. She can't leave the country, can't study in a college, banned from both private and government-run ones, has to wear an ankle monitor for 22 years, forced to pay a big amount of money to both me and the government, and gonna spend 12 years in prison with no chance of parole. She was in one of, if not the best engineering school in the country, and threw them all into the trash for a petty argument. What was the argument about? We were doing a project that was 30 to 35% of that lesson's yearly grade, and when teacher was randomly making the pairs, she paired us. We had a disagreement about it, and she told the teacher she wanted to do it alone because she believed I would cause her to get a low grade, and teacher agreed, asking me if I wanted to do it solo or join another pair, which I did it solo too. When grades were announced, she got something like 4 out of 50, and I got full marks, so she accused me of deliberately breaking our team to make her get a low score, which teacher reminded her that she was to break up the group. Next week, when we were doing an experiment, she replaced the tea that was in my thermos with coffee, which I'm deathly allergic to, while I was in the back getting the stuff I needed for the experiment, the class, the teachers, and she knew I was allergic because I have permission to leave the class if there is a strong smell, since smell itself can cause big breathing issues to me. And I took a big sip when I came back and directly went into shock because of it. Damn. How did they find out it was her? Because of the stupidly expensive machinery in that lab. There are cameras in there. At least 3 of them captured her taking my thermos and putting coffee in it. That is some next level stupidity. Glad she was caught. Hopefully it didn't leave you with any long-term effects. Nothing bad, just some slight scarring inside my throat and 3 missed exams. What was the worst way you saw someone ruin their life? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.